Hey guys, Razio here. Now, this video is going to be another one of my infamously long-winded talking videos. There will be eye candy on the screen, but it's designed to be listened to rather than seen. So if you have shit to do around the house, now is the time. Crank this up in the background and get to it. I know I sound a bit different in this video, because this is going to be one of the more serious videos I've ever done. And what spawned this video? Well, I'm sure all of you, or a lot of you, have seen that the streamer and YouTube personality, the guy Wreckful, which I think is an awful thing happened. He passed away from suicide. But it got all of the gears turning in this old head of mine. Now, I didn't watch a lot of his content, but I knew who he was and saw some of it in my early WoW days. And he even did some Assurance Call videos, which were really fun to watch. Now, I'm fortunate enough to not suffer from severe mental illness myself, though my ex-wife did, and that's a whole different story. So I've definitely have a lot of experience with mental illness. My condolences sincerely to anyone who has been affected by his passing. But this video isn't about him or about his mental illness or even mental illness in general per se. It's about a lot of other things. The shit stain our society has become, loneliness, bullying, and it will probably just come as no surprise that my opinions on this matter aren't mainstream. Overall, though, this video is about how, on more than one occasion, video games have saved my life.
I am Razio.
Now, where do we start? I know. My love of video games has existed for a long time, all the way back to the Atari 2600 days. You see, I grew up in a time period before the internet. I'm a part of the generation where broadband internet was 10 megabytes a second and didn't exist at all until I was in high school, and even then it was only available in like schools and public libraries and government establishments, shit like that. At home, we all had dial-up internet, and I was in, I think, 6th or 7th grade already by the time my parents actually had any internet access, and it was limited because it tied up a phone line and everyone was on when anyone was on the internet. So yeah, good times. So for my generation, consoles were where it was at, and my parents believed that games were bad and would rot your brain out and, you know, all that typical media promoted shit. A waste of time, essentially. Funny how that whole idea kind of still exists in the minds for many people to this day. You know, for example, I know countless friends with wives or girlfriends or, you know, significant others, whatever, shaming anybody who loves to play video games, calling it a waste of time all the time, you know, while as they're saying this, they're on their cell phone all day and sit and fill their empty skulls with reality television and their already full bellies with more wine, cheese, and fucking Twinkies, just making their own fat asses fatter and hating on anything that takes attention away from themselves. So, narcissists. But more on that later. I'm going to do my best to avoid going on tangents here. The point I was getting at was that I grew up in an environment that many modern pissant snowflakes would call privileged. I mean, I'm white, I'm straight, I'm male. I grew up in a middle upper class suburb in the 80s and 90s in a Christian family. My dad was a doctor. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for the most part. She had some part-time jobs and even worked as a secretary for my dad's doctor practice for a while. I was the second child of a family of 7, parents included, so the second of 5 kids. We had a dog, the picket fence, the whole works, right? But there's a thing about, you know, this thing about fucking idiots today. They blame everything but themselves for their situations in life and their status, and assume that just because you didn't or don't have the same problems that they have, that you lived your life problem free and thus have this privilege, big fucking air quotes, and had it easy. But I want to say to them is this: hey, dick cheese, When I was young and my father was busting his ass in medical school while working 2 jobs, one of which was breaking his back literally for a UPS, we lived in a small apartment in California. I do remember one Thanksgiving when I was really young, where all we had for Thanksgiving dinner was day-old grilled cheese sandwiches because my parents literally had no fucking money. Neither one of my parents came from a wealthy background, so the so-called privilege that my family eventually obtained had nothing to do with inherited wealth, skin color, or religious beliefs. It was hard fucking work that my parents put in. So, go to an all-you-can-eat dick buffet and get your money's worth if that's what you're immediately going to go to with this privilege shit. No matter what your skin color, race, sexual preference, or religion is, stop using it as an excuse to why you are where you are in life. If you don't like where you are, stop whining and fucking change it. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has problems. Just because they aren't the same problems that someone else has doesn't mean that that other person's problems don't exist. Having privilege, which, let's be real here, these fucknuts equate the word privilege largely to the word money. Take a look at the richest people in Hollywood. They're killing themselves left and right. They're fucking miserable. They may not have money problems, but they certainly still have huge problems. Again, not the same as yours, but you get the picture now of what I'm trying to say on the whole privilege thing, hopefully. Now, what does all this have to do with video games saving my life? Well, I felt you needed some context to my background, some world building, if you will. It gives the story I'm going to tell context. Now, I was growing up in a time period and in a family environment that was encouraging me to, do big things in my life, like become a doctor, a professional athlete. Yeah, right. Play outdoors, which I certainly did a lot of, and my parents didn't want me focusing so much on video games. Nobody had cell phones back then. They weren't a thing, and computers were viewed as more of like a niche alternative activity. Back then, nobody had a clue that just in a few short decades, technology, computers, phones, and mainly the internet would control the entire fucking planet. That back then, that was the shit of like science fiction. We had consoles, and outside of an Atari 2600 that my mom bought for shits and giggles for us at a yard sale one year when I was really young, I didn't own a single console until I bought a Super Nintendo when it released, and then a little later a Game Boy. And my brothers and I bought it with our allowance that we have saved up for over a year by doing our chores, by cleaning my dad's doctor's office, doing all kinds of shit, because my parents didn't just give us anything, which now I'm really thankful for. But since the first game I had ever played, video games just resonated with me in a way that it didn't resonate with my siblings and most of my friends. There was just something about video games that fascinated me and captivated me in a way that no other activity did, or even since then could. And I've done a lot of stuff. I have a lot of hobbies, a lot of things I love, but nothing quite compares to gaming. But I'm slightly getting ahead of myself here. You see, I know this will come as a huge shock, but growing up, I wasn't the cool kid. And let's face it, in the 80s and 90s, even though most people played video games in some way, whether it was, they had a console in their family, or they went to the arcade while they hung out with their friends and played some games. But if you were that nerd kid that was what today we call a gamer, you were viewed by your peers as a fucking loser. Okay, I was a fucking loser by society standards in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. I was the nerdy kid, with the thick ass glasses and the goddamn bowl cut that my mother made me rock into the 80s and 90s. Most of my clothes were hand-me-downs from my older brother, and in school, man, did I get fucking bullied. I got bullied hard in school. I got made fun of. I got the shit kicked out of me in school pretty much daily, simply for being a nerd or a loser, Now, as you can tell, this was long before I actually grew into my body and became the strikingly handsome man that I am today. But long story short, I feared going to school every day because I knew it was just another day of getting made fun of and getting my ass kicked. And when puberty hit, it got a whole lot worse because then I had the cruelty of girls added into the mix. Dudes can be pricks. And you know that you're going to catch a beating in the locker room after gym class or something like that. In fact, some cases, this is actually how I made some guy friends, because guys tend to kick each other's ass, then be friends. But all that bullying and whatnot pales in comparison to the pure unmitigated cruelty of the popular chicks in school, you know? I mean, how dare you exist and breathe the same air as them, right? But you know what? I wouldn't change any of it that happened for the world. The bullying and the horse shit that I had to put up with as a kid made me who I am now. It toughened me the fuck up, and it set me on the path that led me to today, telling you this story and doing this video for you. It taught me a couple things: to stand up for myself and hand out a couple ass kickings of my own, which I did. I mean, I got in a lot of fights my last 2 years of high school, and I'm proud to say that I won most of them. Except for this one Tongan kid. He smashed the fuck out of me, but I had it coming. It essentially it molded me into a well-developed man, a man who doesn't take shit from people. And at the end of the day, these people that are the bullies, you say, oh, these anti-bully policies, people wearing ribbons, fuck that. They'll get theirs eventually. I mean, how's the bald head and beer gut and dead end job working in a power plant treating you, Steven? How did the teen pregnancy work out, Heidi, you dumb slut? But anyway, once again, getting ahead of myself. Video games saved me for the first time during those rough years. And how? Well, when I was getting the shit kicked out of me and I was getting made fun of, I knew when I got home, I had my video games waiting for me, where I could go on adventures with Link from Zelda, Cecil from Final Fantasy IV, Chrono and his friends from Chrono Trigger. It gave me a place where I felt at peace, where I felt like I belonged, right? I didn't have to look over my shoulder every 5 minutes. I could watch these stories, and again, it's no big surprise, the main games I played were RPGs. But I could watch these stories of heroism and adventure and just play them, and the best of all, I wasn't just watching it, I was a part of it, because RPGs, you're kind of a part of the story. You control the narrative. In these fantasy worlds, in these video games, I felt like I had control where I didn't have that control in my own life as such a weak little kid. But ultimately, seeing these characters in these great stories overcome adversity, stand up for themselves, and fight against, horrible villains, is part of what gave me the courage to eventually stand up for myself and do it in my own life. But most of all, with gaming being so dear to me, it's part of what enabled me to see the hypocrisy and fakeness of all the people around me. You see, as I started to become a teenager and take on other hobbies and interests, such as skateboarding, I noticed things start to change. I got, for the time and everything, I got pretty fucking good at skateboarding. I was sponsored even by my local skate shop. And suddenly, almost out of overnight, I was cool. I was everything that I thought I wanted to be, and girls started to want to go out with me and started to give me attention. The cool kids wanted to hang out and be my friend. I was no longer a loser in their eyes, even though the thing I loved the most and spent most of my time doing hadn't changed at all, which was gaming. I'd become cool and accepted all because I had achieved a status of being good at something that they perceived and accepted as a cool thing to be good at. This phenomenon, persisted when, in my sophomore year of high school, my family moved across the state I was living in, and I had to start from scratch, make new friends and do all that shit. And I was like, fuck it. I had no real friends, nothing. But because, the cool kids in the new school saw how good I was at skateboarding, the same shit just repeated. I was instantly elevated to this role of being super popular, No one would pick on me. A lot of kids kind of were afraid of me. They listened to my opinions. But it felt to me unearned and unwarranted. And I didn't want it. And it's because of the hypocrisy of these kids. I wanted, as little to do with these fucking leeches as possible. I avoided all the huge high school parties, where heavy drugs and boozing were being done. My drug days didn't start till college, okay? And where 3 or 4 illegitimate children were conceived each night. I turned down dates and prom invitations. And why? Because I wanted to play video games. I had my fucking priorities straight. And because I did this instead of what was socially cool or acceptable at that time, It literally saved my life. Had I done what was cool, who knows what kind of trouble I would have ended up in or where I'd be right now. Would I even be alive? I mean, it was during these years that I made my truest friends. Guys I still talk to today. The guys that weren't good at skateboarding and were still considered the biggest nerds and losers of my high school. The gamers. I'm telling you, these people and the games we played were some of the funnest and most genuine memories I have ever had in my life. And it was during this time that I first got into MMORPGs in 1999, which would prove to be the genre that I, to this day, love the most. I think it's safe to assume that the majority of you that watch my channel or my streams do so because you share the love of the MMORPG genre and video games in general. And I'm sure you can think back to countless memories that you wouldn't trade for anything because of the friendships and experiences that gaming and online gaming have given you. I mean, the raids, the PvP matches, the questing and exploring new areas, the stories. I mean, they're great fucking times. And why is this different than the guy that played basketball, or the frat bros that snorted coke and drank beers at the football game, or the sorority thoughts that had competitions amongst themselves about who banged the most dudes and whose ass hung out of their shorts the most? I'll tell you how. Theirs were socially acceptable as normal and or cool and healthy, while in reality, in my humble opinion, the route myself and many gamers in general took was far more healthy and led to much less superficial bonds and experiences and fake friends and more genuine fun and connection. And everything I've said thus far is only what led to the first time gaming really saved my life. As I got older and went to college, paid for out of my own pocket, I might add, again, no privilege, I paid for all my schooling, I made more lifelong friends because of MMORPGs and gaming in general. True friends, most of which I still play online games with today, even though we haven't physically seen each other for years. But it saved me again. Little did I know, as a naive 19-year-old, freshman in college, that some of my darkest days were ahead of me, though. In 2006, after going through one of the worst breakups in my life, I think at the time I was like 23, 22, I felt worthless, like I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Granted, to be fair, those were in my blue-pilled simp days, but at that time it was reality for me. It was my be-all, end-all. I had suicidal thoughts, hopelessness, sense of complete failure and just unworthiness to even be around. And I needed something to bury myself in for a while so I could grieve and process my loss. Go somewhere where I felt important and where I knew what I was doing, and I knew that I had friends there that gave a shit. So I went balls deep into World of Warcraft Burning Crusade, and I've never had so much fun no-lifing a video game, before then or since. I mean, I was a guild officer and we were doing, bleeding edge raiding content in the United States at the time. A solid 2 years of my life were spent there. I mean, I still getting my homework done, still attending classes, still staying in shape and focusing hard on my goals in the game all at the same time. And after it was all over, I came out on the other side, recovered, and able to let go of what had happened in the past. I had made more connections in an online world and had some great talks with some guildmates over that time and friends about these problems and about the breakup and about how I was feeling. And my problems weren't being ignored and I wasn't running from them. Gaming had become a way for me to set them aside just for a little while and get new perspectives and ideas from others about what they had done in a similar situation. Most of all, it was a support system. And it was one I desperately needed. Once again, gaming had saved my life, stopped me from doing anything I would have regretted, or from just flat out killing myself altogether, right? Now, I understand this video is running quite long at this point, so let me wrap it up. Let me TLDR the rest as much as I can. As my life went on, gaming continued to save me time and time again. I mean, being a professional actor that performed all over the country, meaning I'd have to, leave my home and my friends and family for extended periods of time, I always took my PC with me, so I had gaming to fall back on, when I needed it, and so I could still feel like myself. I mean, I would go through a very strenuous 9-year marriage to a woman who was severely mentally ill. bipolar, OCD, anxiety, manic depressive, self-harming, you name it. And my love of gaming and MMORPGs would always keep me from going insane, myself throughout that entire period. It got me through a soul-crushing divorce, which the marriage eventually ended up in. It was, ended, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but infidelity on her part, but whatever. Where I was literally at the point of standing out in a field with a gun loaded and pointed at my own head. But my experiences gaming and my memories of those great times and the hope that I could experience those again, that everything wasn't at the end, pulled me back from the brink. And it's gotten me through so much. In 2014 and 2015, it got me through a cancer diagnosis and the preceding surgeries I had to have and constant checks that I'll have to have for the rest of my life, and the anxiety that comes with all of that. And it still gets me through to this day. The friendships and the memories they created, that these games created, and especially MMORPGs, have made me who I am today. Made me want to create this channel. Odds are, if I never found this passion, I would not be alive today, let alone making this video. Now, if you made it to this part of the video, this far, thank you. I'm sure many of you watching can identify and have your own stories to tell, so please, post in the comments a memory of your own gaming experiences that got you through a hard time or saved your life, or when you reached out to somebody and helped and they reached out to you. To the people who say video games are a waste of time, or you're a loser if you play an MMO or spend time gaming with your friends, I have only this to say to you. Fuck you. And if you have someone like that in your life telling you to grow or man up, just because video games are a waste of time, or for little boys, tell them to go get jackhammered in the doo-doo hole with a long dart and then promptly remove them from your life, because fuck them. And as a quick side note, I understand, like all good things, gaming and the internet especially with its anonymity have brought about the worst in a lot of people. Society today is full of narcissistic shitlords. Social media is damning proof of that. It's why I stay the fuck off of it, both in my personal life and outside of it. I don't have social media accounts outside of this one YouTube channel. Just stay off it, guys. And if you are one of those said people that use said anonymity to be a shit-eating fuck-knuckle to other people because you know full well that the shit you say is something you would never actually say to the same person in real life, where there are real-world consequences and confrontation, bravery involved in doing that, then you're a sniveling coward, and you should really take a step back and take a look at your own life and fix it. Figure out why you feel the need to make everyone else around you have as shit a life and personality as you. Self-improve. No amount of shitting on people anonymously will ever drive away your own lack of self-worth and misery. Seek therapy fucking seriously. Anyway, to my fellow gamers out there, I say this. Take care of yourselves. Gaming is a sedentary hobby. It's a lot of sitting down. So don't eat like shit and get overweight and be a fat fuck. Exercise and take care of yourselves so you can continue gaming and making these great memories along, for as long as possible in the future. Eat right. Exercise, stay healthy. And if you need help, reach out. Just the other day, and this is a quick example, just the other day on WoW, a guy was attempting to troll me while I was half AFK. So I started talking to him, and we ended up chatting for like 30 minutes about both of our divorces and his military service. And he said he had almost no friends anymore. And I said he had just made one in 30 minutes. We friended each other, and it was a fun conversation. That's what MMOs are about. Anyway, guys, video games save lives. I'm living proof of that. Thanks so much, guys, for all the support. Keep an eye on my first AMA video will be coming out later this week, as well as here's my Twitch shit on screen if you ever want to come hang out. I definitely stream every Thursday. I'll be adding more days in the future. Also, keep in mind that I'll be giving away a Logitech G600 gaming MMO mouse live on stream, and it's looking like I will be doing that on the 16th of July, so a week from this Thursday. But thank you again so much, guys. As always, my friends, keep it real.